Marie had been paralyzed for a decade, 10 long years. But her children? They were always too busy chasing life, jetting off on vacations, sipping champagne at parties, and calling it freedom. And me? I stayed. I was the one who sat by her side through every breath, every cough, every fragile hour. I washed her face, held her hand through the night, fed her when her strength gave out. I stayed when everyone else turned away. And in the end, she left it all to them. Her homes, her savings, everything. All I got was a crumbling house on Main Street in Pine Creek, a skeleton of a place that creaked with every step. And Marie's daughter, Lauren, never missed a chance to remind me of my place. To her, I was nothing more than a glorified housekeeper, an extra, someone invisible, disposable, respect. She held it like a blade and never offered me the handle. But then I started cleaning that old house, and I found more than dust and mold. I found remnants of a woman who once knew how to love. I remember one morning, sunlight spilled through the window and bathed Marie's face in gold. For a moment, her skin looked less gray, less worn. She struggled to speak. Her voice was barely a breath. "Would you make me a chicken pot pie?" she whispered. I nodded, wiped her cheeks, rubbed her arms, and she kept watching me like she wanted to say something else, something unspoken between us, hovering in the silence. I turned to the kitchen. I rolled out the dough with my hands, spiced the filling like she liked it. I did it all by feel. When I came back with the pie, her eyes were still fixed upward, unmoving. A strange look. But I didn't question it. I fed her one small spoonful at a time. Usually, it took forever. She'd chew with effort, sometimes giving up halfway. But not that day. She ate every last bite, even asked for warm broth. "You've got a downright appetite today," I said, more to myself than to her. I smiled. It felt good, like something was finally right between us. But at 1:52 a.m., I woke up in a panic. Something in the air was wrong. Her hand was cold. I leaned in, no breath, no whisper, nothing but stillness. Marie. Mom ... My throat clenched around the words. She was gone, just hours after the pie, her favorite. At 9 a.m. sharp, Lauren stormed into the house like a bullet. "What did you do? What did you feed my mom?" she snapped. I almost broke. "You really think I'd harm her? After everything? Where were you for the last 10 years? While you were off living your best life, I was here, wiping her mouth, massaging her legs, reading her old poems just to make her smile. And now you come in and point a finger?" My voice cracked, fury and grief tangling in my throat. Lauren's eyes narrowed. "If you didn't want something from her, why did you stay?" That one hit harder than I expected. I stared at her, long and hard. Something in my silence unnerved her. She stopped. Her husband tugged her arm and spoke, trying to smooth it over. "Kylie, just do the decent thing. Give her a proper funeral." The moment the casket hit the earth, they turned on each other, like wolves. No tears, no prayers, just numbers. They fought over the houses, dividing them up like cards in a game of greed. The remaining $50,000 sliced clean in two. There are moments when human cruelty cuts deeper than any winter wind. Marie had raised those kids alone after her husband died in a farm accident at 41. She ran a corn farm on her own, acres and acres of back-breaking work, just to give them something. And now, this. 10 years ago, when the stroke hit her like a thunderclap, I was still reeling from my own losses. Chad, my husband, had already vanished without a trace. Lauren and Brad were teenagers. I could have walked away, but I didn't. I stayed. I carried it all. And when they grew up, they dropped it all at my feet like a broken plate. Never looked back. Sure, I had my bitter nights. Who wouldn't? She was their mother. How could they be so numb? But I kept going. Maybe out of love. Maybe out of spite. Maybe just to prove I was better than the ghosts they became. Now, as they tore each other apart over square footage and savings, I realized something bitter. 10 years of devotion meant less than a shared last name, less than blood. And that realization hurt like hell. Still, I couldn't hate Marie. Not really. She was kind. From the day I married Chad, she embraced me like I was her own. Dinner always ready. Fruit washed, arranged just so. She never raised her voice, never lost her patience, even when I did. She'd slip me cash on holidays. Go spoil yourself, she'd whisper with a wink. She never made me feel small, never demanded children. Don't repeat my fate, she'd say, laughing softly. I gave everything, and there was nothing left. I didn't get it then, but I do now. She just wanted me to have a life that felt like mine. Kindness like that. It echoes. Even if no one else hears it. The next morning, I woke up and for the first time in years, the house was truly silent. No wheezing breath, no faint cough. Just me. Then a knock shattered the calm. Kylie, a voice called from outside. You should really think about selling that place. I've got a buyer, and they're offering a good price. They'll renovate everything. That house isn't safe anymore. It's falling apart. You shouldn't be there alone. Brad, Marie's youngest, the one who showed up only when there was something to gain. I didn't answer. Just stood there in the quiet ruins of that old house. The only inheritance I got, and maybe the only one that mattered. I found a buyer, Brad said, his tone too casual to mask the greed beneath it. They're offering a solid price, planning to renovate the whole place. Come on, Kylie, the house is falling apart. It's not safe for you to be here alone. Why not take the money while you still can? Brad, Marie's youngest, the phantom son who showed up only when there was something to gain. I didn't even turn to face him. I'm not selling, I said, my voice flat as stone. Please leave. He scoffed. Kylie, I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help yourself. It's a good deal. Lauren already sold her place next door. She's obviously got more sense. She's taken the money, moved on, and you're here, clinging to this broken wreck like it means something. His words rolled off him like oil, smooth and unbothered. Deals like this don't come around often. You'll regret it if you let it slip. He didn't even wait for a reply, just walked off like the house was his to sell, like my life was just another item in the estate sale. A few days later, the noise began. Machines groaning, engines revving. The air filled with the sharp, mechanical scream of drills tearing into old wood and brick. Lauren's house was being torn down, piece by piece. The vibrations shook the bones of the street. Dust rose like smoke from a funeral pyre. If Marie had been alive to see it, it would have shattered her. The home she built with her bare hands, with years of sacrifice and stubborn love, destroyed less than a week after she passed. A lifetime reduced to rubble. The thought of sharing a wall with strangers with no memory, no respect, made me want to run. But before I could even consider leaving, I felt the need to clean the house one last time, to reclaim it, even for just a moment. This was the house where Chad had grown up. He hadn't been back in years, but if he ever did return, I wanted him to recognize this little sliver of his past. I started slowly. Room by room, I wiped, scrubbed, polished. Eventually, I filled a bucket with water and stepped into the hallway. That's when I saw them. dirty footprints across the freshly mopped floor. I frowned. Strange. I crouched down, examining the floorboards. They'd shifted with time, worn thin and fragile. I prodded one. It creaked and gave way. Underneath lay a wad of $100 bills, tucked into the dark hollow beneath the wood. My breath caught. My hands trembled. What the hell? I lifted the board further. Neatly packed bills, stacked layer after layer. My heart thundered. Did Marie hide this? Was this hers? I locked the door, knelt down, and carefully removed the bundles, placing them into a black trash bag hand by hand, bill by bill. It felt like touching secrets, like excavating a truth no one was meant to find. It took me 2 hours to count it all. $300,000. I sat frozen. The weight of it was unreal, tangible and impossible all at once. And just as I was closing the floorboard, I noticed a yellowed envelope nestled at the bottom. Inside, a note in Marie's shaky, familiar handwriting. Dear Kylie, this money is for you. Stop waiting for the baby. It's not worth it. Live your life, sweetheart. I've always thought of you. I've always wanted the best for you. The words struck me like a punch to the chest. My throat clenched. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. And for the first time since she passed, I let go. 10 years of buried emotion, bitterness, exhaustion, grief came roaring to the surface. I sobbed, not delicately but violently, like a dam finally broken. My cries filled the house like a storm. I don't know how long I stayed there on the floor. Time had no shape anymore. Eventually, my body gave out, and the tears ran dry. I dragged myself to the mirror, my eyes swollen and raw. Behind me, the black trash bag bulged like a secret no one could touch. How had she gathered so much money? Her own children had treated her like an afterthought, too self-absorbed to notice what she'd been hiding. But she'd trusted me, not them, me. And with that realization came a sting of shame. All those moments when I'd resented her, when the weight of caregiving felt too much, when I felt like a martyr. She never owed me anything, but she gave anyway. I had never seen so much money in my life. It felt like it might crush me. Gratitude, confusion, guilt, all of it tangled together. But I took a breath and did what needed to be done. I couldn't sleep in a house with that kind of cash in a garbage bag. I waited until the street was empty and the air had gone still. Then, cautiously, I stepped outside, heart pounding. I'd divided the money into 2 jars, just to be safe. With every step, I felt watched. Eyes in the shadows, branches whispering secrets. But each time I turned, nothing. Just the soft rustle of dry leaves and the hollow wind. I deposited the money and walked home under a warm sun. The sidewalk radiated a quiet peace. From the restaurant next door came the comforting scent of something being cooked, garlicky, familiar. I glanced at my watch. School would be over soon. And then, out of nowhere, a strange warmth bloomed in my chest. After Chad and I married, we'd had a son, Atten. My parents, God bless them, had stepped up without complaint. They'd picked him up from school, fed him dinner, let him fall asleep on their couch when I had no energy left. They had been the quiet heroes of my motherhood. And now, with Marie gone, I didn't have to split myself anymore. I could be a mother. Fully. Finally. I picked up my phone and dialed. Mom? Don't cook tonight. You and Dad, pick up Atten, meet me at Gloucester's. Dinner's on me. There was a pause. Then her voice lit up, soft and surprised. All right, sweetheart. When they walked into the restaurant, I was already at the table. I waved, smiling wider than I had in years. They smiled back, their faces warm, familiar, full of love. For a fleeting moment, I felt it, that lost feeling of simpler days, of family dinners and unburdened hearts. And I knew something had shifted. Maybe finally, something was starting to heal. I watched my reflection in the restaurant's window, careful not to let my face betray what was churning beneath the surface. When my parents arrived, I pulled them into a hug that might have been a little too tight. "Mom, you're squeezing too hard. I can't breathe." Atten squirmed beside me, and I let out a breathy laugh. All right," I said, loosening my grip. "Come on, the food's almost ready." Looking into their familiar, time-worn faces, I felt a sudden, piercing tenderness. Time was a thief, and it had been stealing from me in slow, silent increments. The fried chicken and cream of mushroom soup I'd pre-ordered were already laid out on the table, steaming and fragrant. I slid the menu toward my parents with a gentle nudge. "Pick something else, too. Whatever you want." But they waved it off, as always. "This is more than enough," my mom said. "We never finish it all anyway. No need to waste." I tried to insist. Money wasn't a concern anymore. Not tonight. But they wouldn't budge. Decades of thrift woven into their bones. And in that quiet moment, watching them smile over a simple meal, I realized, sometimes real comfort doesn't come from abundance, but from the familiar weight of shared silence, of time well spent. The dinner lingered for nearly an hour and a half. Warm lighting softened the restaurant's corners. Outside, twilight unfurled like a soft blanket. Excusing myself, I stepped into the hallway toward the restroom, only to stop dead at the sound of a voice, sharp and low like a blade slipping from its sheath. They're sitting there, laughing like one big happy family. Just the thought of them spending our money makes me want to barge in there and rip that damn bag right out of her hands. Tessa, Brad's wife. I froze. The eerie feeling of being watched all day suddenly made sense. It had been her, listening, waiting. She and Brad had only been married 6 months, but they'd already quit their jobs, dreamers with a taste for shortcuts. Tessa dabbled in insurance once, made a quick buck, then flamed out. Routine made her itch. Real effort bored her. Brad was worse. Hooked on the thrill of the gamble. The second money touched his hands, it disappeared into poker chips and empty promises. Tessa had been pregnant recently, just 2 months along, but her chaotic lifestyle and bad habits didn't allow the pregnancy to last. And now? She was bitter. Feral. "You know, your mother was so damn biased," Tessa hissed. "You're her son. And she left you nothing but that dump of a house. But Kylie, she gave Kylie the money. That stranger." A pause. Then a venom-laced whisper. "Chad's probably rotting in some ditch, and if Kylie remarries, all that cash goes to another stranger. You need to fix this, Brad. Maybe through Ethan. You know what I mean?" My blood went cold. "Are you insane?" Brad's voice was shaky. "That's my nephew. We can't hurt him." Tessa didn't miss a beat. "So what? We just watch her blow through all your mother's money. That's your plan?" Silence. Then Brad muttered, "Fine. Keep watch on the street. I'll stay close. Wait for the right moment." My palms were slick with sweat. My fingers fumbled for my phone. I pressed record. Every word. Every syllable. I needed proof. Then I turned and walked briskly back to the table, forcing my heartbeat to steady. "Mom, Dad," I said softly, "why don't you head home a bit early? I'll call the car. Ethan and I have to take care of something." They didn't ask questions, just nodded and left, as they always did, trusting. Once they were gone, I slipped outside and found a quiet corner. With trembling hands, I called the police. Then I grabbed Ethan's hand and led him out of the restaurant. We turned into a narrow alley, a shortcut to a side street. Quieter, less exposed. The neighborhood was still, almost unnaturally so. A few stores lined the road, one of them run by an old friend of ours. I made a mental note to stop there if anything went wrong. The streetlights grew dimmer as we walked deeper into the alley. My steps quickened. I pulled Ethan close, my grip protective, almost desperate. "Mom, it's really dark here," he whispered. "Did we take a wrong turn?" "No, baby," I murmured. "The exit's just ahead. We're almost there." Then I saw it. Movement, subtle but unmistakable. Brad, standing at the far end of the alley, pretending to tie his shoe, but his movements were too deliberate, too rehearsed. I instinctively positioned myself between him and Ethan, and then Tessa stepped out from the shadows behind us. Her eyes glinted, cold, sharp, predatory. "Kylie," she purred, her smile thin and mocking. "Leaving already? We weren't finished talking." My heart pounded against my ribs, but I forced my voice to stay level. "What do you want? If it's about the money, just say it." Brad stepped forward. "Since you asked, we want the money. The money you took from the house." I stared at them, stunned by the sheer audacity. "You're insane. That money was left to me. It's not yours." Tessa let out a bitter, ugly laugh. "Oh, please. You took care of her, so now you get everything? You weren't even family." I straightened, clutching my phone so hard my knuckles went white. "I already called the police," I said. "They're on their way." Brad faltered. His confidence wavered. "Don't try to bluff," Tessa snapped. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Try me. The call went out the second I left the restaurant. So you've got a choice. Walk away now or explain to a judge what you were planning to do in a dark alley with a child." The silence that followed was thick and choking. And in that silence, I saw it. The flicker of doubt. The realization that they'd underestimated me. Let them. They'd done it for years. But that ended now. Tessa hissed through clenched teeth. "Brad, she's bluffing. The police don't come this fast." But Brad wasn't so sure anymore. I watched the flicker of doubt creep into his face, his brow furrowing as his grip tightened around his phone. At that moment, the bell above the corner store's door jingled, soft but sharp, like a warning. James, the shopkeeper, leaned out from behind the counter and spotted us instantly. I raised a hand in silent greeting. Brad caught it too. His eyes darted toward the store, panic rising just beneath the surface. "Stop pretending, Kylie," Tessa snapped, lowering her voice. "Even if you called them, we still have time." I stepped in closer, steel in my voice. "What you've already done could land you in court. But if you make another move while my son's here, it's kidnapping. You want to ruin your life for real?" Sweat glistened on Brad's forehead. His hand trembled. He wasn't built for pressure. He folded under it. Then James stepped out onto the sidewalk. His presence was solid, grounding. "You all right over there, Kylie?" he called. "Yes," I answered quickly, voice calm but cutting. "James, would you mind calling the police again? Someone's been following us." That did it. Tessa went ghost white. "Shit," she muttered, grabbing Brad's arm. She really called. But Brad didn't move. Not at first. His eyes locked on mine, confused, wavering, like a boy caught between running and confessing. "Brad," I said softly, "if there's even a scrap of decency left in you, don't make this worse." He hesitated, then turned, breaking into a sprint. Tessa followed, cursing under her breath as they disappeared down the far end of the alley. Moments later, the shriek of sirens shattered the night air. 10 minutes passed. The police arrived. James gave them a full statement. I handed over the recording I'd made and the transcript I'd written. No physical assault, but intimidation, harassment, and stalking? That was enough. "We'll file a report," one of the officers, a woman with steady eyes, told me. "I suggest applying for a temporary protective order." I nodded. All I want is for them to stay away from me and my son. Ethan stood beside me, small and silent. His hand clung to mine, trembling slightly. I squeezed back, grounding him. "It's okay, sweetie," I murmured. "Mommy's here." That night, Ethan fell asleep curled against me, his breath slow and even. I ran my fingers through his hair, tracing the quiet peace I hadn't felt in years. That's when it hit me. This house no longer needed someone else to hold it up. I was the backbone now. Me. And it was enough. The next morning, I cracked the window open just as voices floated over from the other yard. "Did you hear? Tessa and Brad nearly got arrested last night." "Yeah, with the police and all. No surprise, Brad's drowning in gambling debt. Poor Kylie. 10 years she cared for that woman, and now she's stuck cleaning up this mess. She's better off now. With that money, she won't need to work another day if she doesn't want to." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. In a town this small, rumors were faster than the mail. I didn't have to defend myself. Truth had legs, and it was already walking. Brad and Tessa were the new local scandal. People here had always side-eyed Brad's gambling, but now that it was out in the open, the wolves came running, creditors started circling. Even the casinos stopped extending credit. And Tessa? She fell even harder. Her insurance job was already on life support. Now it flatlined. Her reputation was shot. Clients ghosted her. Some even laughed in her face. Selling insurance with that kind of reputation? They sneered. In a desperate attempt to salvage her image, she posted a teary video online. Red eyes, quivering lips, sobbing about how poverty had driven her to reclaim what was rightfully hers. But the comments were brutal. "Being poor doesn't give you the right to steal. Get a job. Don't take someone else's life. It was your sister-in-law who cared for that woman, not you." The video got flagged, her account suspended. Her humiliation was public, merciless, and irreversible. Lauren, who had stayed mostly quiet through it all, finally cracked under the weight of the gossip and rage. She called me. Her voice still had that trademark sneer. "Kylie, what the hell did you say to everyone?" I raised an eyebrow, even though she couldn't see it. "I didn't say a thing. People figured it out on their own." She scoffed, venomously. "Don't act so smug. You think you've won? You think this is over? That you've cut us off for good?" I exhaled slowly, calm and clear. "Lauren, I stopped caring about you a long time ago. I always knew what you thought of me, but I still clung to this stupid hope. That maybe, just maybe, we could be a family." A pause. Then I went on. "But now I know better. I was just free labor to you. A convenient fixture in your lives. If you want to fight over houses or scream into the void, go ahead. But don't come looking for me again." And I hung up. 3 days later, a gray suitcase appeared at the Pine Creek train station. Chad was back. He stepped off the train in a rumpled coat, face drawn with exhaustion. The shadows under his eyes were darker, deeper, but the icy aloofness in his expression hadn't faded a bit. He stood there on the platform for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. One unread email from Lauren. She was on the warpath now, and whatever was coming next, I was ready. "Chad is rumored to have inherited all of Mom's money, cash, property, maybe more. Are you really going to let her walk away with everything?" Lauren's message was crafted like a weapon, every word calculated to strike at Chad's deepest insecurities. And at the bottom of the email was the finishing blow. A photo. Me and Ethan, bathed in soft golden light. A perfect tender mother-son moment. But Chad didn't see warmth. He didn't see family. He saw comfort, and to him, that was unacceptable. She lived too well, he thought. That ease, that peace, shouldn't belong to her. His eyes narrowed, and something cold and greedy flickered beneath his lashes. That same night, Lauren met him at a cafe off Main. A quiet place with fogged windows and old jazz playing faintly in the background. "So you're really back," she said, folding her arms across her chest, her eyes scanning him. "Didn't think you'd ever set foot in this town again." "I wasn't planning to," Chad replied, reclining in his chair with practiced indifference. "But your letter gave me something to think about." Lauren let out a dry, joyless laugh. "You mean it smelled like money?" Chad didn't even bother denying it. "You're not wrong. I'm not about to let her walk away with everything. That was Mom's money. It belongs to the family." "Don't get all righteous on me now," Lauren snapped. "Where were you when Kylie was washing Mom's hair and changing her bedpans? You disappeared, Chad, for 10 years. "I didn't owe anyone anything," he said, his voice hardening. "I left because I saw this place for what it was, dead weight. Kylie stayed. That was her choice. It doesn't give her the right to claim everything." Lauren stared at him, then said quietly, "Legally it does. That money was left to her." "I'm not taking it to court," Chad said, leaning forward. "I'm going to hit her where it hurts, emotionally." Lauren's brows pulled together, uneasy. "Do you really think she has any emotions left for you? She cut us off cold." Chad smirked. "Then I'll use Ethan." Lauren's face dropped. Her voice was sharp, incredulous. "You're insane. That kid doesn't even remember you. You vanished right after he was born." "I don't need him to know me. I just need Kylie to believe I've had a change of heart. A little remorse for my father's mistakes. That's all it'll take." Lauren stared at him, a strange mix of disgust and recognition in her eyes. "You haven't changed a damn bit. You talk about fairness and justice, but it's always been about money. And you're any better?" He fired back. "We're in this together now, whether you like it or not." The air between them went still. Finally, Lauren said, her voice quiet but firm. "Then we need to be smart. She's not the same woman you left behind. She won't fall for sentiment." "I know," Chad said, standing. "That's why you go first. You're still family. You can get closer than I ever could." "And when are you going to make your grand entrance?" she asked coolly. He gave a humorless chuckle. "Soon. While she's still floating in that little dream of hers. I think it's time someone brought her back to reality." That afternoon, I walked out of the corner grocery store, a bag of bread and milk in my hand. The sun was shining, spring flowers dotting the edges of the sidewalk. And then I turned the corner and stopped. He was there. A gray trench coat hung from his shoulders, a battered suitcase slumped behind him. His face wore a tired smile like a mask, half apology, half performance. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My heart thudded against my ribs. Was I hallucinating? Chad. The man who walked out of our lives 10 years ago without a word stood in front of me like a ghost in broad daylight. But instead of anger, my first reaction was something colder, emptier, unfamiliarity. He spoke first. His voice was rough, rusted, but painfully familiar. "Kylie." I took a step back before I even knew what I was doing. "Chad?" I forced the name out, calm on the surface but edged with steel. "What are you doing here?" He smiled like he'd practiced it in a mirror. "Just Wanted to see how you were doing." I said nothing, just adjusted the bag in my arms and walked past him without a word, my spine straight as a rod. I didn't look back, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't trust myself to. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him still standing there. He didn't call after me, didn't follow. That night, while I peeled potatoes in the kitchen, my thoughts looped around his face. His hair had gone gray, his eyes creased with wear. But that emptiness, the hollow self-interest, was still there, untouched. In the living room, Ethan was humming softly, working on a puzzle. He had no idea that the man who once called himself his father had returned from the dead. And then it hit me. He doesn't even remember what Chad looked like. 10 years, 10 goddamn years of weathering storms alone, of raising a child, caring for his mother, shouldering the weight he abandoned. And now he thought he could just waltz back in? 2 days later, he showed up at my front door. I didn't open it. He stood there with his hands shoved in his pockets, trying to play the part of the repentant wanderer. "Kylie," he said, voice low, "I'm not here to make trouble. I just want to see Ethan. Maybe we can talk sometime." I looked at him long and hard before answering. "There's nothing for us to talk about." "I'm not trying to take anything," he said quickly. The last few years haven't been easy for me either. I want to take responsibility." I let out a bitter, sharp laugh. "Now you remember you're a father?" "I know I messed up," he said softly, "but I want to make it right." I stayed still. My voice didn't waver. "What you can give, my son doesn't need, and whatever you're really here for, I'll find out soon enough." Chad didn't come around after that, but I knew he was still in town, lurking, waiting, and whatever plan they were stitching together in the shadows. I was ready, because this time I wasn't going to flinch. I saw him everywhere, at the grocery store, sitting in the town square, lingering just outside the school gates when Ethan was dismissed. One afternoon, Ethan came home and dropped his backpack with a thud. His voice was casual, too casual. "Mom," he said, "some man stopped me today and told me he was my dad." The coat rack nearly slipped from my grip. A chill crept down my spine. "What did you say to him?" I asked, trying and failing to keep the panic out of my voice. "I told him I didn't remember him," Ethan replied with a shrug. "He said I looked like him, but I don't think so." His smile was kind of weird. I crouched beside him, gently taking his hand. "Sweetheart, if he ever approaches you again, you can be polite, but keep it short, okay?" Ethan nodded, but I saw the questions already taking shape behind his eyes. That night the phone rang. "Lauren." "So," she said, like she was commenting on the weather, "did you see Chad?" "You knew he was back," I said, my voice sharpening instantly. She hesitated. Then, "He just wanted to see his baby." A beat. "He's not a bad person." I let silence stretch, then spoke softly, but with force. "Lauren, don't insult us both. He's been gone a decade. No call, no letter, nothing. And now he suddenly shows up? He's still Ethan's father, isn't he?" I didn't answer, but something was crystallizing inside me. Chad hadn't come back out of guilt or longing. He returned right after Marie passed, right after the inheritance transferred. It wasn't grief that brought him home. It was money. And I had a sinking certainty. He didn't come alone. They were working together. They always had been. Outside, the wind rattled the blinds. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Whatever they were planning, they wouldn't find the same woman they left behind. Lauren had been around more lately, too often to be a coincidence. She no longer spoke with her usual smugness. The acid in her tone was replaced with a strange warmth. She brought me pastries, invited me for tea, offered to help sort through Marie's old things. "You've got enough on your plate," she said sweetly, "with Ethan and the house." I just thought I could help. We're family after all. But I wasn't fooled. This wasn't kindness. It was calculation. Lauren wasn't softening, she was strategizing. Every visit was a move on a board she thought I couldn't see. Every sugar-dusted cookie, every kind word, just another way to test my edges. One afternoon, we sat in the living room of the old house. She was dusting a shelf, pretending it mattered. "So," she said breezily, "what are you thinking of doing with the place? The market's strong right now. You could make a great profit." "I haven't decided," I murmured, not bothering to look up. She kept pushing, her voice still dipped in honey. "If it's sentimental, you could keep it for Ethan. It's his grandmother's house after all. Might mean something to him someday." I gave her a faint smile and said nothing. She switched tactics. "By the way, Chad keeps saying how much you've changed." I looked up. "Of course I've changed," I said. She chuckled lightly. "Not in a bad way, just strong. You've carried so much on your own. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to let someone else share the weight." I heard it clearly then, the real reason she was hovering. She was laying groundwork, creating an illusion of closeness, paving the road for Chad. That night, I sat alone on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the wind tangle the branches outside. I thought of the girl I was 10 years ago, a young bride, desperate to belong, ready to give everything for a place in this family. But this house wasn't my home anymore, and that man wasn't my husband. He didn't return for love. He came back for a piece of what wasn't his. The realization didn't shock me, but it hollowed something inside me just the same. The next day, I took Ethan to the children's library. He sat curled in a beanbag chair, flipping through a book about galaxies, his face calm, focused, far away. Then he looked up at me, his voice tentative. "Mom, do you think that man really wants to spend time with me?" I froze. He keeps asking me what I like, what I want, but he never asks how my day was. His words pierced something I didn't know I'd been guarding. "Do you like him?" I asked gently. He shook his head, eyes already back on the stars. And just like that, I knew. He felt it. Even at his age, he could already sense who truly loved him and who didn't. That night, I pulled out the documents Marie had left me, the inheritance files, bank ledgers, proposals for the trust, her careful notes written in blue ink. I spread them out across the kitchen table and went through every page, slowly, thoroughly. This money wasn't just mine. It was Ethan's future. The next morning, I called a lawyer, scheduled a meeting. Then I started updating every financial document. I established a trust in Ethan's name, making him the sole beneficiary. I added a trustee exclusion clause, ironclad and clear. No access, no authority, no influence for any third party, including Chad. I wasn't going to wait for him to strike. I already had. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I smiled at Lauren's cookies, nodded at Chad's rehearsed remorse. I played my part. They didn't know I'd rewritten the script. Every word they said, every look, every gesture. They were still playing a game I had already won, and I let them think they were still in control, because soon they'd find out just how far I'd come. I was 3 steps ahead. I waited, calmly, silently, while the mask slowly slipped from his face. The late spring heat made everything restless, and Chad was growing agitated. I could feel it in the way he lingered too long, smiled too wide, stood too still. For weeks he'd worn the costume of redemption, polite, measured, even charming. He brought me coffee, waved cheerfully at Ethan after school, played the part of the remorseful ex at social events. He made it all look so effortless, like a man simply trying to reclaim what he'd lost. But I knew better. He wasn't trying to rebuild a family. He was circling the vault, waiting for me to lower the drawbridge. But the gate was already sealed shut. Then the call came. "Hello, Ms. Kylie Jones. We received a request from a Mr. Chad Jones, claiming to be the legal guardian of Ethan Jones. He's submitted paperwork requesting access to the trust fund and authorization for a withdrawal." My fingers went numb around the phone. I steadied my voice. "That account is sealed. I am the sole trustee. There's an exclusion clause. His father has no legal access or authority." A short pause. Then the bank official's tone shifted. Calm turned to cool, professional assurance. "Yes, ma'am. We reviewed the documents thoroughly. Everything's in order. You're the only authorized party. No action will be taken on his request." I ended the call, not with relief, but with something firmer. Resolution. Chad had finally made his move. Half an hour later, my lawyer sent over the official rejection letter the bank had issued. It was beautiful in its bluntness. "Per the directives of the trust's founder and outlined contractual terms, you are not authorized to access these funds. No further inquiries of this nature will be acknowledged." I could almost see Chad's face as he read those words, calculated charm collapsing into disbelief. He'd underestimated me, thinking I was still the woman he left behind. The next day, Lauren came knocking. She walked in with no pretense, no prelude. "You saw it all coming, didn't you?" I set a glass of water on the table, saying nothing. She clenched her jaw. "You're ruthless." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm protected." Lauren stared at me for a moment, but the usual fire behind her eyes had dulled. "You think you've won?" she said. "Chad's not the kind to give up." "Then let him keep fighting," I said softly. "But he'll never get a cent. What you're trying to take never belonged to you in the first place." Her composure cracked. She stood up sharply, voice rising. "Don't get cocky." I smiled, just enough to make the point. "I'm not. I just never assumed this would be easy. You did." She slammed the door behind her, leaving nothing but the bitter echo of retreat. A few days later, I spotted Chad outside the grocery store. His posture was slumped, his face drawn and pale, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. The confident man who once left this town with his chin high and heart cold was now a husk of himself. He noticed me and took a tentative step forward, then hesitated. "You win, Kylie," he said at last, voice dry and strained, like the words hurt coming out. "No," I answered flatly. "I didn't win. You just lost." He blinked, caught off guard. "This was never a game. You thought everything could be bent with pressure or bought with guilt. But some things," I paused, "can't be taken. Not by force. Not by manipulation." He looked down at the pavement, shoulders sagging. "I thought I could at least hold on to something." "You once had everything," I said quietly. "A family. A son. You left all that behind. If you've got nothing now, that's not fate. That's you." Chad didn't argue, didn't protest. There was no fight left in him. He lingered in town a few more days. Then, just like before, he vanished. No goodbyes, no scenes, just silence. Lauren disappeared too, as if they both understood that the story had ended and they were no longer needed in its final act. Life went on. I began to show up more at events, meetings, neighborhood gatherings. Not to prove anything, not to impress anyone, just because I finally could. The local library needed volunteers. I signed up. The neighborhood association was planning spring events. I helped string up decorations and arrange tables. The Children's Art Center welcomed parents to assist in weekend programs. I became a regular fixture. "You're always so thoughtful," Susan, one of the coordinators, said warmly. "Everything goes smoothly when you're around." I smiled. A real smile, one I hadn't worn in years. Maybe it was just that I'd spent so long taking care of others, I'd forgotten how to be seen. But now I was finally choosing to show up for me. Ethan, too, had begun to thrive in this new quiet. His mood softened, his laughter came quicker. Every day after school, he'd spill through the front door brimming with stories. Who got in trouble, what game they played at recess, what he drew in art class. One afternoon, he came home beaming, a certificate clutched in both hands, excellence in math. I pinned it proudly on the fridge and found myself pausing to look at it every time I walked by. In the evenings, he'd do homework at his desk while I sat nearby, working on my own notes, pages of plans, outlines, dreams I'd tucked away for too long. I wanted to start something, a small counseling service right from home. I'd spent years nursing people back to physical health, but now I wanted to help women like me, worn thin, unheard, forgotten, to find their voices again. It wasn't about money. It was about giving something I once desperately needed. I called an old friend who now worked in family services. She ran a community program focused on rebuilding broken support systems. When I told her what I was planning, she was quiet for a moment. "Is that really what you want to do?" she asked, surprised. I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, the answer came easy. "Yes, it is." "I want to try," I said, nodding slowly. There was a time, not so long ago, when I'd wished for someone to reach into the darkness and pull me out. Just one hand, one voice, one reminder that I wasn't invisible. Now I wanted to be that hand for someone else. She squeezed mine gently. "You've changed, Kylie," she said. "You've become stronger, wiser." I didn't answer, just smiled, letting the silence stretch between us, warm, unspoken. Time moved forward like it always does, quiet and indifferent, as if nothing had happened. And yet, everything had. Outside, the trees along the street were dressing themselves in tender green, shy new leaves shimmering in the sunlight. The windows glowed with it, and the soft air smelled like something between rain and honey. Early summer awakening. In the kitchen, I brewed a cup of black tea. The kettle whistled a gentle tune, the only sound in a house that finally felt still for all the right reasons. Ethan sat at his desk, bathed in light. The sunlight touched his shoulders, golden and kind, as he wrote with careful concentration. His face was changing, less round, less boyish. A hint of the man he would become flickered in his jawline, in the calm curve of his mouth as he thought between lines. This was my life now. Quiet. Clear. No more clutter of people who didn't deserve to stay. No more emotions that burned holes instead of filling them. That afternoon, we walked hand in hand through the community garden. The earth was warm beneath our steps, the scent of flowers brushing the breeze. He chattered nonstop, his voice full of joy. "In art class today we made a tree, a big one, with a bird's nest, cut out of paper. Mom, did you like to draw when you were little?" "I did," I said, smiling, "but I wasn't very good at it." "Then prove it," he challenged, very seriously. "Draw something and we'll compare." I bent down and wrapped my arms around him. "But your tree is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." He laughed, high and bright, then tugged at my hand again, pulling me forward. The sunlight poured through the branches above us, casting dappled shadows across the path like stardust scattered at our feet. My steps were steady, unhurried, like life now. No longer chasing, no longer lost. That evening, we made dinner together. He washed vegetables at the sink while I stirred at the stove. On the fridge behind us, his tree drawing fluttered slightly under a magnet, already a part of the home's heartbeat. "When I grow up," he said suddenly, "this drawing will still be here, right?" "Really? Really?" "Yes, baby. It'll remind me of this kitchen and this moment, of a little boy washing carrots, laughing, telling stories." His eyes shone. "Mom, when I grow up, I'll protect you, just like you protect me now." My hands froze over the skillet. For a second, the world stopped breathing. Then I smiled and nodded. "It's a deal. We've got a promise." Later that night, after the house had gone still, I sat on the balcony alone, a forgotten mug of tea cooling between my hands. The streetlights hummed in the distance. Now and then, a nightbird cried into the quiet. I closed my eyes and thought about every step that had brought me here, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the nights I didn't think I could carry one more ounce of sorrow. But time, like water, softens the sharpest edges. Those memories had rippled and settled now, no longer crashing waves, just echoes. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore, or their apologies. I had made peace with the silence, learned to carry the weight and still walk forward. Ethan's slow, steady breathing drifted from inside. It was the most sacred sound in my world. And in a whisper meant only for myself, I said it aloud. "I'm home. Truly, finally, home." The wind nudged the curtains. I stood, gently closed the window. Behind me was a house that no longer held ghosts. It belonged to me, completely. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's more to come, and you won't want to miss the next chapter.